Yesterday we talked about the ultimate mercy, the mercy of Calvary. One may think that that should have been the grand finale on this series on mercy. However, with such a great example of mercy afforded to us, we should look at how we can follow in those footsteps. Well, Jesus did say in Matthew 16:24, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." He obviously wasn't speaking of a literal cross, because after his sacrifice there was no more need to shed blood to remit sins. However, he was stating we should die to self. And one of the greatest ways to die to self is by displaying mercy. Those whom have taken up their cross will have no problem showing mercy. And those early followers of Jesus were great examples of such. Whether it was the disciples exercising mercy and healing the sick or diseased folks, or Stephen, who after such a great sermon was rushed by those he preached to and bitten upon, actually gnashed on him with their teeth. Then they drug him outside of the city and stoned him. Now, it was either outside of Lions or Herod's Gate, which just so happens to be just down the road from Golgotha. And he makes this statement as his attackers are stoning him. Acts 7:60, "And he kneeled down and cried with a loud voice, 'Lord, lay not this to their charge.' And when he had said this, he fell asleep." Remember the definition from a few videos ago on mercy? Compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. What a display of mercy. And amidst this display, we read of someone witnessing the act. Acts 7:58, "And the witnesses laid down their clothes at a young man's feet, whose name was Saul." Now, Saul wasn't immediately affected by this amazing statement of mercy, because as we read in Acts 8:2, as devout men are carrying Stephen to his burial, the very next verse states, "As for Saul, he made havoc of the church, entering into every house, and hailing men and women, committed them to prison." And this goes on for some time, and his search for Christians to persecute leads him to Damascus. On that road, he has quite the encounter, the Lord striking him down, blinding him, and asking him in Acts 9:4, "Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me?" And he said, "Who art thou, Lord?" And the Lord said, "I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest." And there he finds salvation, with Ananias baptizing him, and his journey as a believer starts off. However, it starts off a little rocky with the church. Acts 9:26, "And when Saul was come to Jerusalem, he essayed to join himself to the disciples, but they were all afraid of him, and believed not that he was disciple." And if they're a little skeptical, you can't blame them. After all, this is the guy who had just recently dragging church members out of their homes and to death sentences. Fortunately, one man named Barnabas believed in Saul. Acts 11:25 says, "Then departed Barnabas to Tarsus for to seek Saul. And when he had found him, he brought him unto Antioch. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church, and taught much people. And the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch." At first it seems like something we can read over. First called Christians at Antioch. Like it was just all of a sudden a catchy nickname that someone thought up. However, it was more than that. See, history tells us that Antioch was the home of someone Saul of Tarsus had an encounter with before. Now, we can't be sure that Saul had ever spoke with this former resident, but we do know he watched over the coats of those that stoned him. Yes, Stephen the martyr was probably one of the prized sons of the church at Antioch. Yet Saul of Tarsus was welcomed there and stayed with them for a year, teaching many people. No doubt their hospitality and mercy caused them to be first labeled as Christians. See, there isn't much greater a Christ-like attribute you can display than mercy. This was the message that Jesus was trying his best to instill in his disciples in his time on earth. He was talking about the kingdom of heaven being likened unto a certain king, which would take account of his servants. He found one that owed 10,000 talents, and he didn't have the money to pay. The Lord commanded him to be sold, his wife and children and all that he had, and payment be made. But that servant therefore fell down and worshipped him, Matthew 18 tells us, saying, Lord, have patience with me. I will pay thee all. The Lord was moved with compassion. The Lord forgave him. But that same servant went out from the presence of the Lord, found someone which owed him a simple 100 pence, laid hands on him, took him by the throat, and said, pay me what you owe. When the Lord found out, he was extremely upset. He cast that servant into the prison because he would not forgive a simple debt, even though a much greater debt was forgiven of him. See, when we bring all of our garbage to the Lord, all of our skeletons in our closet, all of our hurts of our past, all of our pain, all of our issues, all of the sins that we have committed for years and years, and he shows us mercy and forgives us all of those sins, then he expects us to be merciful in return. And when we are not, he is extremely upset with us. Out of all the great beatitudes, the one that will return to us what we give is the one that says, Matthew 5:7, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Why is mercy so important? Because if you don't give mercy, you won't receive mercy. And the sign of being a Christian, the number one sign, the one that caused people to first be called Christians, was mercy. God desires merciful people. Remember when he said this, but if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would have not condemned the guiltless. This statement Jesus made to the Pharisees because they condemned him because he showed mercy and healed someone on the Sabbath day when they thought he shouldn't be working. See, their lack of mercy was the one thing Jesus always was upset with, constantly frustrated with. And one of the hallmarks of a Pharisee is they don't like to display mercy. My desire is to be more like Jesus, merciful, than to be like a Pharisee, lacking mercy. Lord bless. Thank you for these wonderful 5 days together. I hope you will choose mercy next time you have an opportunity, choosing to be like Jesus, choosing to be like the Christians, those that were Antioch, where they were first given that label. Oh, what a label. Merciful.